Every once in a while, I search the internet for WR Hatton and Sons. My grandfather was the last to run the firm, and it goes back several generations. If you happen to be a collector of either ceramic jugs or ginger beer bottles, or if you are really enthusiastic about laundry products, you might have bumped into WR Hatton and Sons over the years. The firm made laundry products including soap, bleach, bluing, starch, shirt forms, and WR Hatton and Sons supplied pretty much anything else needed by a large laundry. When my grandfather retired, he tossed out everything. Now dealers dig the occasional bleach jug or bluing bottle out of an old landfill in London and sell them at auction on the internet, most of the time under the mislabel of a ginger beer bottle. The second oddest thing I found was one of the old double iron stands for sale at an auction based in North Dakota. I'd love to find out how one of the iron stands ended up in North Dakota. The first oddest thing that I happened across was Laundry Lore. Looking through online auctions, I happened across Laundry Lore, which was a sales catalog put out by the firm. The copy I managed to snap up was from the Victorian era and has wonderful pages of lithographs and that peculiarly enthusiastic Victorian wording you find in old advertisements. My favorite part of the front page is the telegram address: Hattonista, Norkins, London. Norkins would be North Kensington. The firm was next to Wormwood Scrubs Prison. I took the catalog to Timeless Photo on State Street in Boise and asked them to shoot pictures of my favorite pages and print them on metal like an old-fashioned tin sign. The results are amazing to me. Timeless Photo did an excellent job, and I picked out some beautiful Bubinga and some Bocote to make some frames. Picture frames, even simple ones, are a bit of a challenge because the 4 miter joints need to add up to exactly 360 degrees, or it will be obvious that they don't quite line up. The pros use a miter trimmer that will make a perfect 45-degree angle. I didn't have one of those, but my miter gauge on my table saw is pretty accurate. First, I swapped out the dado set I happened to have in my table saw for a normal blade. The next task was to make at least 3 sides square. You might notice I often wear a full-face respirator when I do some projects. The main reason is I find that it keeps the dust out of my eyes better than safety glasses. I also am concerned with becoming sensitized to exotic woods. According to wooddatabase.com, Bocote can cause cross-reactions once you are allergic to certain other woods, such as Macassar ebony and most rosewoods. Apparently, Bubinga can cause irritation and lesions, although that's said to be rare. Anyway, it sounds like it might be a matter of preference. I did manage to get some much lighter dust cartridges for my respirator, so in the future I won't have quite as much weight hanging off of my face. The article on wood allergies and toxicity in wooddatabase.com is interesting reading. For example, I learned today that there is a wood called sneezewood. I am not making this up. The article says the oil in the wood can cause violent sneezing. I ripped the wood to rough width on my table saw and then made 3 sides square. I did this by running the wood through my jointer, then referencing that edge against my table saw fence. I ripped the planks of Bubinga and Bocote to the final width. I also had to cut some of the longer wood to manageable lengths before I cut the miters, since cutting the miters would have a long piece of wood hanging off the table saw and banging into stuff in my tiny workshop. The other thing that can cause a picture frame or anything else that is supposed to be rectangular to go cockeyed and have gaps at the joints is if the opposite sides are not exactly the same length. To get this right, I stack the 2 sides and make both cuts at one time. You might want to use double-sided tape to do this. I used my router table and a 1/2 by 11/16 roundover bit to give the wood a nice round contour. This shows off the grain of the wood. I put the dado back in the table saw and cut a 1/4 inch dado in each piece of wood on the inside edge. This would allow me to mount the sign inside the frame. Then comes the gluing. Since these were oily tropical hardwoods, I used denatured alcohol to clean up the parts that were being glued. The alcohol at least removes some of the oil from the surface of the wood, enough to glue. I use Titebond 3 since it's reportedly better at gluing oily wood than Titebond Original, although you find lots of articles on the internet about what kinds of glue to use on oily wood. Now, a picture frame doesn't need a really strong joint. There aren't any significant external forces working on it. There's just the picture frame and the picture. Pictures aren't really that heavy. So, as long as you have a strong joint, you'll be fine. Watching glue dry is not interesting. Sanding, and more sanding, and more sanding. I sanded the wood to 600 grit with my palm sander hooked up to my shop vac. Some parts need to be sanded by hand, or maybe just scraped with a cabinet scraper until the glue is gone. You really need to be careful sanding the corners, especially on the inside, because you can cause this rounded look on the corner if you sand into the other side. If you have a bevel or some flat corner, you might find using a chisel to be pretty effective at removing the glue without rounding off that corner. And if your chisel's really sharp, you should end up with a pretty finished looking surface. When you finish oily wood, you need to be sure your finish will dry or harden. The oil from the wood sometimes mixes with the finish you put on and interferes with the drying or polymerization process. The Bubinga gave me no trouble using Waterlox's sealer and high gloss finish. The Bocote, on the other hand, had spots where the finish stayed soft and tacky. There's a woodworker's saying that shellac sticks to anything, and anything sticks to shellac. So, one of the ways to deal with oily woods is to try to remove as much surface oil as you can, and put on a coat or two of shellac before putting on a finish. In the end, I found myself out of time and with a decent but not perfect finish on the Bocote frame. When I get some spare time, I'm going to work my way up to a piano finish on that beautiful wood. This is a neat gadget. It's called an automatic center punch. When you push it into the wood, it gives a little pop and punches a dimple in the wood so you can drill without the tip of the drill bit wandering off center. These picture frame hangers are probably way overkill, but I find that they lay flatter than a screw eye, so I used them on all 6 of the frames I made. I'm pretty happy with the results. There are tools out there that you can use to push in glazier points, including ones that are similar to a staple gun, but I prefer to just tap them in with a screwdriver and a mallet. I have made quite a few picture frames over the years, and I have seen several videos on YouTube describing how to tie the picture frame knot. Some of them are obviously wrong, and some are right, and this is my way of tying the knot. Well, that's this year's Christmas presents taken care of. Happy Christmas, everyone.